Hey there, Willowbrook. Thank you so much for doing daily devos with us. My name is Bobby Ann, and today we are in the Old Testament book of 2 Samuel chapter 11. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, I think it's where we meet David. Meet David? Haven't we already met David? I mean, we've been reading about David. We've read about David the shepherd boy. We've read about David the warrior. We've read about David being anointed as king. What do you mean, meet David? I think we meet David as the man in his most vulnerable spots. It's one of the things I love about the Bible is we've got a Bible hero here, that the Bible actually calls a man after God's own heart. And we see David the failure. This is true about a lot of Bible characters, Bible heroes, that the Bible doesn't hide their warts, their shortcomings, their mistakes. It lays it all out. And that's what we find here today in chapter 11. Read with me in verse 1. In the spring, when kings march out to war, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel, and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. Now, what do you mean? The spring when the kings march out to war? Did somebody ring a bell? It's time to go to war. I'm not sure there was a bell. Pretty sure there wasn't. But what might help us understand this is baseball season. Baseball season starts at a particular time. It's an agreed upon time that baseball teams come together and they play baseball. The rain has mainly stopped. They're able to play outside. They do so. People come out and watch. Well, kind of the same thing here. It's less rainy. The chariots aren't going to get stuck in the mud. And so the kings march out to war. But David decided not to. Well, what's up with that? Well, I have to guess here that David is kind of decided he's earned the right to stay home. I mean, we know that he's a gifted warrior. Why would he stay home? This is the first of what we'll know if you read the chapter, many mistakes that David's about to make. But I think it starts with this first one that seems possibly insignificant and small, that leads him down a path of one temptation, one fall after another. This is where I think for many of us is where we get caught up to. It's in small choices. It's in tiny things that, though they seem insignificant, can make a really huge difference. It reminded me of a quote that I read in a book called Messy Spirituality, and this is what it said. It says, spiritual people are about tiny things, which is the fruit of their spirituality. The spiritual life is not a life of success, it's a life of faithfulness, and it's not easy. God does big things once in a while, but there is no question that the primary work of God in the world is salt and light, tiny. God knew we would naturally be dazzled by big. And that's why Jesus told the parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, the mustard seed. Jesus was trying to tell us something. Hear this. The spiritual life is a tiny life filled with little decisions, tiny steps toward God, tiny glimpses of his presence, little changes and small movings, tiny successes, and imperceptible stirrings. We'll go on to read in chapter 11 that David would have an affair. He would get a woman pregnant. He would try to trick the woman's husband into sleeping with her. He would then murder that husband. We see that David took a path that started with one small decision. What could that be for you today? When you take a look at your schedule today, your to-do list, what might be a small thing, something that seems insignificant, that if you chose faithfulness, you chose obedience, that it would start you on a path of experiencing the pleasure of God, Chapter 11 finishes with clearly God says God was not pleased with David. Sometimes our tiny disobedience leads us on a path of not pleasing God, but sometimes our small obedience starts us on a path of God's pleasure. What is that for you today? Would you ask God, what does it look like to be faithful today? Maybe it's a conversation you need to have. Maybe it's where you don't need to spend your money that you were thinking about. Maybe it's some of these little choices of obedience that make an enormous difference in experiencing the peace and the pleasure of God in your day today. I hope that you will seek God, that you'll enjoy his pleasure and his peace, and that you'll have a happy Wednesday.